Hi, this is Nicole Rivera, and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast. You ever feel like you can't find the right person to give you feedback on your work? I think every writer has that moment if you haven't already have a developed critique partnership or a group that you're working with. And we have plenty of people in the Stop Writing Alone community that feel that way. We've done critique circles in the past through Happy Campers Club, but now's the time to really build a newly formed critique crew. And that is what I want to talk to you about this week. Critique. It's one of the most sought after activities within the writing community. We all reach a point in our writing when we realize we need another set of eyes on our work before we send it off to our readers. Friends and family can be helpful, but constructive criticism from colleagues in the trenches of the writing experience is the gold standard. It's time Stop Writing Alone becomes a place where you can find that. However, I don't want to design that alone. I want to invite you into the conversation about what a modern day, compassionate, inclusive, constructive critique group looks like. Those of you who join me in this conversation will be part of the inaugural Stop Writing Alone critique crew. So why do we have to plan this? Writers who've worked with me know that I do not enter into critique relationships lightly. Active members in the Stop Writing Alone community and listeners of this podcast also know that I believe there is discussion to be had surrounding what a modern day critique group and experience looks like. In the most recent seasons of the Stop Writing Alone Happy Campers Club, this has been a very active conversation, especially since the publication of such books as Craft in the Real World by Matthew Salises and the Anti-Racist Writing Workshop by Felicia Rose Chavez. Many writers who have entered into writing workshops, critique groups, or even in the pursuit of their higher degrees have been discouraged, silenced, or plainly misunderstood due to a practice that was not welcoming of diverse voices and or stories. However, most of us learned how to participate in critique in this exact way, as if it were the only, quote, right way to engage in the activity. I believe we must actively work together to unlearn this before we can begin to practice something new. If you are interested in joining me on this journey, which will culminate in a brand new aspect for the entire Stop Writing Alone community, or are at least curious about it, then I invite you to the intro chat on Wednesday, January 25th, 2023. In order to accommodate as many time zones as possible, I will hold the chat 2 times, once at 12 p.m. Eastern and again at 7 p.m. Eastern. I have the link and I will put it in the show notes, but I also sent this entire thing, on a Substack earlier this week. There is in the Substack an RSVP that will be active for the week so that I have some idea of how many people will be coming to each meeting. And if you're not interested in this, there's no big deal for that. If you are interested and these aren't times that work for you, I totally get that, and I'd love to hear from you as well. But here's what the preliminary plan is, regardless, whether you're interested in this now or perhaps later in your writing career. This is what I'm hoping to do, at least right now, to build the foundation of critique in Stop Writing Alone. And while I expect to discuss this more in depth during our chat that will happen on the 25th, or our chats, I should say, what I'm aspiring to accomplish with this first critique crew is, in January, having 2 meetings on one day, where we gather up who's going for the ride. I just need to know who's my initial critique crew. In February, those people that are in it, that decide they love what they heard and they're going to go for it, we're going to have 2 to 3 meetings while we read and discuss Craft in the Real World by Matthew Salises and possibly any other materials that the group finds relevant when we have these discussions. In March, we're going to have 5 meetings, or at least we're going to meet over 5 weeks, where we design and practice our new model of critique amongst ourselves, amongst this initial crew of people that are in it. And I say 5 meetings over 5 weeks because I don't know, is it going to be 1 meeting a week? Is it multiple meetings a week? That's part of what we're designing. So we're just going to take 5 weeks in March to really not only design it, but practice it and see what works. And then that is the work of the initial critique crew, because my hope, my aspiration is that in April and May, there will be a 7 meeting / 7 weeks Stop Writing Alone critique camp that will be open to everyone based on what we have designed over these 3 months preceding. So what's in it for you if you decide to be part of the initial critique crew? I'm not going to lie. I'm asking for a dedicated group of people to devote time and creative energy to this process. I hope that the exchange will be worth it for you. First of all, aside from expanding your own horizons and knowledge base concerning the world of critique, for the entire month of March, your writing will get the eyes you've been longing for from a group of writers as heavily invested in the process as you are, including me. I mean, that's what we're going to be doing in March. We're going to be critiquing each other's work, just using a model that we've designed. So it's a whole month of critique. Yay. Secondly, the active and participating members of the critique crew will have a very well-deserved special entry fee for the Stop Writing Alone critique camp this spring, if they're interested in diving even deeper into constructive criticism of their works in progress. You might be over it after a month in March and say, good, I got to get back to writing. But if you want to keep it going and go for 3 months, there's definitely, a perk for anyone that has helped me through this discovery of what is the best model for our group to work with. So that's pretty much it. That is the plan. That is what I'm hoping for. I've been wanting to bring critique to the larger audience here in Stop Writing Alone, but I have not felt comfortable with the traditional model of the writing workshop. And so when I read Craft in the Real World and found a text that not only spoke to my concerns about that model, but also laid down some very clear sort of structure and ideas about what we could do in place of that, I thought, okay, now I have something that I feel comfortable moving forward with. But again, just like in my philosophy of Stop Writing Alone, I didn't want to do this all alone. It would be very strange for me to create my idea of what a great critique group looks like for the community without having a conversation with the community about it. So that is the purpose of this spring, is I'm calling it spring because I'm thinking in college terms, like we're in a spring semester. It's still the winter here in New York. So that's the intention of the beginning of this year. Let's say that Q1 we'll take diving in and learning not only what some of the suggestions are in this more updated idea of constructive criticism and feedback of our work, but also what of that works for the community that we have here. And over the weeks, I'll give you updates here on the podcast about what are some of the discoveries that we're making and possibly what we're looking to create. I mean, I already have some ideas based on what I've picked up from my reading, but I definitely want to hear from others first. And we've had lots of conversations about this, like I said at the top, in Happy Campers. But it's been, 2 or 3 of us over and over again having the same conversations. And I just wanted to open the door and invite everybody in and say, let's have this chat and let's make this something that we can do in a very intense way in April and May. And then I'm really hoping that there is some model that can be woven into the monthly offerings of the Stop Writing Alone Substack community as well. It's the one bit missing. We need to find a way to find our readers, to get our feedback, to have conversations about the process of our writing. And yeah, I'm ready for it, but I don't want to do it alone. So this week is all about that. Will you join me in this critique crew? Will you learn with me and help us start thinking about this whole process in a brand new way, in a more compassionate way, a more inclusive way, and really do the work that we need to do to elevate every single writer's writing to deliver the story that they want for the audience that they're intending to write it for. This is it. I'm just very excited about it. I did write this article and shared it in Substack, and if you're a subscriber, you got it yesterday. But I definitely wanted to share it with you again here on the podcast for any listeners that don't subscribe, and just let you know that this is where we're moving next. This is not to say that anything else is getting pushed out of the way for it. Today after I record this episode, I am doing writing practice. We're still doing write-ins. We're still, of course, always and forever doing writing prompt parties, all of those things. This is something that I've wanted to add. And again, I don't like to talk about critique lightly, so I'm not going to just throw it in. I do most of the things that I do in Stop Writing Alone and in my life is like throwing pasta at the wall to see if it'll stick. And so every single bit of Stop Writing Alone has been that way. Like, well, what if I make a YouTube channel? Let's see what happens there. What if I make a Substack? Let's see what happens there. That's all that, but I will not do that when it comes to this very serious aspect of our writing. I know that when you bring a piece of your writing into a critique group, this is very serious. This is you trying to take your work out into the real world, and I don't want to be flippant about that in any way. So, that's it. That's what I have. I literally just read you my Substack article. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, or just like I said, I'll have the link for the Substack article in the show notes. You can ask me right in the comments there, whatever way. If you're in the Stop Writing Alone network and Mighty Networks, you can DM me there, or just put the question up in the group page. There's so many different ways to access me. And this is the conversation that I'm in right now. So I am more than excited to discuss it. And speaking of excited, when I shared a photo on Instagram about my plans, I had a picture of the Critique Crew logo on my computer, and I had Craft in the Real World on my desk in front of it. And I tagged the author because, it's his book, right? I figured that if somebody's curious about the book, they can tag it and they can follow him. But the coolest thing happened. He shared it in his stories. I had a nerdy moment where I was dancing and excited because I'm such a super fan of his right now, just because of this conversation is so important. I sit in a place of privilege. I know that I'm a cis white female, born and raised in America. I have so much privilege. I don't know what to do with it half the time. But I've been a teacher of so many students that came from other spaces and places and races and cultures. And it's, I just want to open the door to all the conversations, all the stories. I want to diversify the media culture that's out there. I've talked about this before on this podcast, I believe. Confession. I recorded a couple of podcasts at the end of the year that I don't think I ever produced and put out there. And now I'm thinking this might have been one of them. But I'm pretty sure I've talked before about the whole idea that the hero's journey is not the only story structure out there. And yes, it's very comforting and makes sense to us as Americans and most people in the Western culture, because that is what we were born and raised on. But there's so much more, and I have a passionate love for all kinds of stories. So the more we can diversify the process to getting our stories created in the original intention that they were made for the audiences that they were intended to read, the more we are all going to be exposed to more diverse stories. And that just excites the crap out of me. Sorry. So anyway, that's where I'm at. That's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about learning the process, practicing it, and I'm really excited about the types of writing that is going to be liberated when there's no more silencing or shaming, almost like your writing's not right. This is the only right way. I mean, that's ridiculous. But anyway. And also, I am incredibly excited about shining a light and understanding any of my own innate biases that I already come with, those unconscious ones that you're like, wait, what? So I love that process. I love learning about how I perceive the world and how that's not the one way, and seeing other perceptions. I don't know what that's about, but I've always been fascinated by that. So this feels like another way to enter into that conversation. Fun times ahead, ladies and gents. So, yeah. If you're in for the ride, let me know. Well, if you're in for the ride, I'll know when I see you on January 25th. Unless, like I said, if you can't make it to either of those times, just reach out to me. Let me know that you are still interested, and we'll try to work something out that we can have a conversation on the side and see if we can't get you into the OG critique crew.